Hey, thanks for stopping by. What we're doing today is changing the front passenger side wheel bearing on a 2017 Tahoe Premier. I got the truck jacked up, using impact to pop off the lug nuts, get the wheel off. Using the same impact here to take off the axle nut with a 35mm socket. Battery just died, but the impact makes quick work of that. If you don't have an impact, you probably have to break that axle nut off with the wheel still on and the truck on the ground. I'm using an 18mm socket to take the two bolts out in the back that are the caliper mounting bracket bolts. I'm going to leave the caliper mounted right to the bracket. I got to use a breaker bar. These are on there pretty tight. Can't get an impact in there. Now this is a T30 to take off the retainer for the rotor. And I am going to loosen the bolts that go into the caliper to the bracket, but I'm going to leave it all on there. Now I'm using a little wire here to wire the caliper and the bracket out of the way so it's not hanging by the brake line. Here, just pop that rotor off. Now you'll have access to the back 3 bolts that hold the hub assembly on. It takes a 15mm socket. You need a breaker bar here. And if you got your vehicle jacked up, make sure you have jack stands under it so that you don't, wiggle your vehicle off of just a plain jack. You can see how much it moved right there. I couldn't get the breaker bar on the other side. It was too long, so I used a hammer to break it free and then finished up with a cordless ratchet to remove the rest of the way. I found that it works best to take the one on the right out first, then the one on the left, and then kind of the top one. Otherwise, your socket gets hung up on the ball joint bolt or the boot on the CV axle. The hardest thing right now is trying to disconnect the sensor wire up to the vehicle that's on the hub. I sprayed a little lubrication on it, used the pliers, screwdriver, a couple different things. Finally did get it. I actually cut a bunch out of me struggling with it there. So when you put it back together, make sure you use dielectric grease. Now I'm just popping the clips that hold the wire off so I can pull this hub off of the axle in the front. Now that everything's disconnected, you can pull the whole assembly right off. Time for a quick candy snack. Got my new Moog assembly. But before I put that on, I want to make sure that I get everything cleaned up. So any of those mating surfaces in there, anything around that CV axle, any debris you can get off. I'm using a little brake cleaner here along with an old toothbrush. Now I'm going to liberally coat the inside with some anti-seize, so anywhere where that's going to touch along with the splines on that axle. I can put the dust plate on the back of the new hub, get her all lined up. The dust plate has some little indexing tabs on it that sit on the top of the hub. I can put those 3 bolts back in and make sure that I run my sensor wire back up along the same clips and everything. Actually, one of the clips I reused an old one. It fit in the hole a little bit better. And I got to remember to put the axle nut washer and axle nut back on. Right here, I'm just running those 3 bolts that hold the hub assembly on with my cordless ratchet. I'm going to put my regular People Power ratchet on there along with a breaker bar and get these guys tightened up. Now I'm sure there's some torque specs that I didn't look up. I put them on tight. So that's the way I did it. Put them on as tight as I could get them, little taps. Got my axle nut on. I'm gonna run it on there, not overly tight, just enough that, it pulls the axle through. I will do my final torque after I get the tire on. So I can put my rotor back on with that T30 Torx. I wedged my pry bar between the studs there so that I could tighten up that set screw. I'm putting a little dielectric grease on that sensor wire before I connect it, just to make sure. I had to push the little clip back, make sure that I get it in there and attached. The dielectric grease will help, so if I ever take it off, that really was a big struggle to get it out of there. You can see I unwired my caliper, got everything straightened up. It should just slide right back on. There it goes, a little persuasion. I can tighten up those 2 or replace those 2 caliper mount bracket bolts. Like I said, I left the caliper on the bracket. I didn't take the caliper off. Get those back in there, the same thing. Tighten them up with my cordless ratchet and then get them back to my torque setting, which is tight. And also, since I did loosen the caliper from the bracket, I didn't take it off. Just tighten those back up, make sure everything's looking good. Clean up my area and get ready to put my wheel back on. So I stick the tire back on, get it lined up, put all my lug nuts on finger tight so I don't cross thread anything, do my star pattern with my impact. One more time around with the impact to double check everything. So that 140 foot-pounds, we need those front lug nuts to be to. And now I got my 35mm socket back on the axle nut with my torque wrench. Got to double check that I'm going the right way. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I got my torque wrench set between 185, 188 foot-pounds to get that guy tightened up. So here we go. 188 is pretty good amount of pressure, so we get her down until we click. She's rolling forward. We get a click there, we know we're good. Double check it. Pop that sucker off, and time to put on the finishing touch of that center cap. So this is a center cap you can pop off if you don't have an impact to loosen that axle nut. Oops, there we go, got it in there. Now it's all done. Took it for a ride. The whirring sound was gone. Everything's great. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped. Like and subscribe if you want to.